everyone, and welcome to a new episode. Today we're here with Theresa. Theresa was in season 8 of Alone, and if you haven't checked out that show, I highly recommend it. And I usually introduce our guests, but Theresa does so many cool things that I asked her if she can introduce herself. So, Theresa, thank you so much for being here. And can you please introduce yourself?
Sure thing. And yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. So I am a traditional living skills specialist. I travel around the world teaching how-to classes on things like using the whole animal, tanning skins with fur on, tanning skins with fur off, sewing, clothing patterning, and doing demonstrations for open-air museums. I also have a PhD in prehistoric leather tanning technologies. And I do artifact analysis for traditional glass case museums.
That is amazing. So, Theresa, you're definitely not a conventional woman with a typical lifestyle. So, what made you choose this life path?
Ooh, what made me choose this life path? Wow. So, I guess I've done skills my entire life. I was definitely that kid that was like, I'm going to go and live in the woods all by myself someday in the mountains and not interact with any other people. And then at some point realized that actually I'm a really social human. So that probably wasn't going to happen. But still, really wanted to make a living from doing what it was I love, which is archaeology and experimental archaeology and dealing with artifacts. So I ended up working at the Smithsonian for a brief period of time as an intern, and then across the pond. Did a master's degree in experimental archaeology and stayed on for the PhD. And at that point, just decided that I'd gotten enough requests to do how-to courses that I thought I would just give that a try. So it started out slow and it very quickly picked up into being one of my main aspects of my income. And yeah, I guess I'm doing exactly what I always wanted to do, which was living the skills and teaching skills and managing to actually buy enough food to stay alive by doing it. So
Okay, that's great. And just a question that came to my mind right now. Do you ever get a feeling that you are do you feel a disconnection from the current society where right now everything is so automated and everything is through an app on the internet, and you are studying, ways to do things millennial before and during the Stone Age and during time before? So do you ever feel some sort of disconnection?
I don't necessarily feel a disconnection from modern society. I don't often understand the high technology. Obviously, I can turn my computer on and off again when things go wrong. I have a website that I kind of maintain. I have all the social media, all those things. And occasionally when you're on the internet, the way that people interact with other people on the internet does seem absolutely and utterly bizarre. The reason it seems bizarre to me is because when I meet people in person, they never behave like this. I feel like perhaps there is a disconnect between the faceless context that the internet provides for people and how they would actually act were they to just meet that person in real life. I would say 99.9% of the people I meet in my life are lovely. And I would say 70% of the people I meet on the internet are lovely. So that is actually a disparity statistically.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you so much. I just needed to ask that because you are the first person I have met online, but I have met in my life that has this kind of lifestyle, and is something that I was definitely curious about. And thank you for sharing that. Definitely, face to face is more authentic and you can perceive more things than what the person wants to show you, for sure.
Absolutely, completely agreed. I think that, disagreements in person are a completely different thing than they are digitally. But I mean, there is occasionally a disconnect. Like I've actually been out teaching courses where an adult has sat down next to a campfire and said that's the first time that they've been next to an open fire.
Wow.
That slightly blows my mind. All I can ever say is welcome to being human.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And something I have noticed here in the United States is that, that this disconnection, or that very few exposure to natural things like an open fire, or even in some states or some places, vegetables, because I have worked with kids and I have seen a lot of cases where kids don't know how a cucumber looks or how a tomato looks.
Right.
But
Before it's put into a plastic container. Absolutely. There is absolutely, without a doubt, there is a disconnect from food. One of my classes that I teach a lot these days is the Using the Whole Animal class. And I would say 80% of the people who are on it are there to learn more about where their food comes from. Like, they eat meat, but they buy it at a farmer's market. They buy it in a shop. Maybe they even hunt, but they've never thought, that everybody thinks about the fact that, okay, so you can use a whole animal. Sure. Doesn't mean everybody did all the time everywhere. That's nonsense. Of course they didn't. They used what they needed when they needed it, but everything can be used. And I have people coming with that intent, is to learn more about it and to connect more deeply with where their food comes from, and to some degree the skills of their ancestors. And it's one of those skills that every single person on the planet's ancestors did. So it's very connecting in that way.
For sure. Yes. No, 100%. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just when you were saying that, I am actually from a very small town in Venezuela, and my dad used to be a farmer. So I grew up with seeing where the meat comes from and how they prepare the meat. And I just remember they will make chairs and clothing and boots and hats from the leather. So that's also one of the reasons why I was very excited to talk to you, because it was like, oh, wow, she's preparing the leather, and you are teaching people how to do the same and how to connect to that and to their ancestors, which is very important.
For sure, absolutely. And I mean, a lot of times the skins are a waste product in our modern society, and being able to understand how to process those at home and then be able to turn them into utilitarian items and clothing that will last you for 20 years. I have clothing that's 20 years old made out of the skins that I've tanned that I wear with frequency, and it's still going strong.
Wow.
I don't get that. I don't get that with my fleece shirts. They're convenient because I can chuck them in hot dryers so they dry fast, but I can throw my brain tan shirt in the dryer too, as long as it's on low heat.
There you go. I didn't know that. Fun fact about leather.
Yes, fat tan is brilliant. Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Theresa. And also, I want to start diving more into the show, because the way we connect is that my partner saw you on TV, and he was just absolutely amazed about your survival skills and about everything you did in this show, which was Alone, right? And the season 8. So the first question about this is, why did you decide to participate in it?
Well, there's two motivations. One, it's a challenge. You're like, oh, cool. I've been doing this my whole life. I've been out by myself before, even for a few weeks. I'd done a television previously that was with a group for over a month. But Alone gave you the opportunity to go out for a long time and really put that skill set that you've worked on your whole life and that you spent a good portion of your life teaching to other people to the test, and really not only identify your strengths and go like, oh, I'm so glad that I knew that and I'm really good at that, but to really identify your weaknesses and your weak points as well, so that you can come away from that kind of experience and then go work on those. Nobody's perfect. Nobody knows everything. That's nuts to even think that. I don't like fish. I don't like to eat fish. So yeah, I know how to fish. I know about 20 different ways to fish in a traditional sense, with no modern tools, this, that, and the other thing. What I don't actually know a lot about is fish behavior. So it's a bit like trapping. It's all good and well to know 20 traps, but unless you know an awful lot about the animal you're trapping, you don't know where to put them. So I wasn't super surprised that my fishing needed some work, but it did.
Yeah, I saw that. And then I saw the part where you got trapped into the fishing lights and your life vest inflated, and you got hypothermia. That was the part where I was like, no, Theresa, no, come back to shore.
Yes, that was it was unexpected. Yep, absolutely. It was just, I guess equipment malfunctions happen. I had, you never see the whole story, right, in a television program like this. There's a lot of editing because there has to be, you send in 8 hours a day of footage. They have thousands of hours of each participant. So then they can only delve so much into each thing. But I'd given this whole thing a trial run earlier and had gotten a life vest that also self-inflated. These life vests self-inflate in such a way that they want you to float on your back. It's actually really hard to turn over onto your stomach and try and swim in them. So I had said, hey, I plan on doing this thing. I need a life vest that either is already inflated, so that you're just there in one of those orange ugly things, or one that doesn't automatically blow up when you hit the water, because I need to be able to swim. So hence the reason we all thought that had been sorted, including me. I'd read the thing. It didn't say anything about self-inflating. And lo and behold, it did.
It did. So that was, from my opinion, and you can say if I was wrong, but from what I saw is that it was a near to death experience. And again, you were there by yourself for a several amount of days and in the middle of nowhere. So now I want to dive into that part, because more than half of the people that were on that show, they quit because they couldn't handle the psychological aspect of being there with those harsh conditions again, and living in the middle of nowhere and having to hunt and find for food, and also the extreme weather conditions as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't there on day 50 or 80, but you were. And most of them couldn't cope with being alone. So from everyone there, you were the one with the best attitude, Theresa, and you were the strongest in that area, in my opinion. So what would you say has helped you achieve that mental strength in your life?
Well, thank you very much for that, I guess. I wouldn't say that people can't handle being alone. I think it's a choice that you make between everybody misses somebody while they're out there. A lot of people had families, they had kids to go back to, they had parents, partners, whatever it happened to be. And there is a point, I think, with a lot of people where staying isn't as important anymore as being with those people. We are really social animals. It's how we're designed. It's how we're hardwired. For myself, I don't have kids. I travel alone a lot. I'm used to being on my own. I'm with people all the time when I'm traveling, but I'm the instructor. I'm the one that goes between the different places. You're in a different social setting where, you see a new group each time. You don't have that same long-term bond with the people that you're around. So other than being quite homesick on a few days in the 20s, where I couldn't even figure out where I was homesick for, which was actually quite funny. I remember having a conversation on camera about it and then them actually using it. Yeah, and my dad laughing about it afterward and telling me that he called that my orphan song because I didn't sound like I had a home. I was like, thanks, Dad. Yeah, cheers. But I think just being someone who is a little bit nomadic and moving around a lot really did help with that, as well as, I'll tell you what, just having been out before on my own for long periods of time in the woods, or the prairie or the desert or whatever environment it was that I'd been in, you go through that homesickness thing. And all homesickness really is you being out of your comfort zone. You don't have a routine and your brain is looking for one. So that's when you start going, oh, I need to establish one, a little bit more of one. Let's make this home. So as opposed to missing home, you just make a new home. And that's what I do every time I get to a new place.
Wow. Okay. So from what I got from your conversation is that first, it's not something that happened overnight. This was something that you have been doing for a long time by being alone in different environments. And then you pointed out the fact that the brain is always looking for a routine. So it's always looking, and then you are building new homes in different places because you are able to create a home. And from the footage that I saw from you is that you made that place your home. And I remember you making it from scratch, making the hole, bringing the pieces of wood, and you made a lovely fireplace.
You have to have a really good spot to sit by it and warm up and just drink tea, because there's lots of times where you just need to sit and drink a cup of tea. and decide what the heck it is that you want to do next or need to do next. But most of the time, it's a want to do next because you wanted to be in that situation. You chose to put yourself in that situation. So, you have your moments where you whinge about the fact that, wow, it rained in the morning. Now it's snowing. Now it's sleeting. Oh, look, it's raining again. Fun. Oh, and now the wind is blowing about 60 miles an hour. Yeah, the weather was absolutely manic out there some days. But for the most part, like I say, he chose to be there. And if you go into it with the mentality that this is something I've asked to do, yes, and I am getting paid every day that I'm out here. It's another, the monetary thing. People kind of they sort of wiggle it under the table sometimes, but we all have to eat. We are given a stipend. So each day that you're out there, hey, this is my job today. I'm getting paid. And the other aspect for me that was mental with this is a game. This, for me, was a game I chose to go play. It was missing a lot of pieces. It's not like we could just hunt everything and trap everything. You had pretty stringent rules on my season. So I just looked at it like a puzzle that was missing a bunch of pieces, but you still needed to figure out what the picture was. So how do you do that? And so it gives you a lot of mental stimulation while you're there. And you're trying to think outside the box, and it's constant problem solving. And when your brain is busy, you're not worried about anything that isn't happening right then.
Right. Okay. I really like what you say. You chose to be there. There's so much power in that statement, because most of the time we think that things happen to us, but actually we choose everything that happens to us.
Very little in modern life just happens. We have a lot of choice in our lives. We're not someone who is born into a place that has very few options. We have a lot of options. Sometimes they're rough options, but we have them. Yeah.
So also, will you say that the fact that your mind was in problem-solving mode all the time, you were able to survive day by day by just...
I think having your mind in problem-solving mode so much of the time meant you were very present. And when you're present, then you're not overthinking things that are outside of your control anyway. And I think occasionally that can be a challenging aspect of being alone in a situation where you're away from all of your normal things, and you're going to start missing things like friends and family and food. Ice cream, deep fried carbohydrates. But, again, an aspect of the show that I felt the show potentially didn't do justice to the gathering that got undertaken by a lot of the participants. It wasn't just me. I know gathering isn't as exciting as somebody failing at trapping or succeeding at hunting or succeeding at trapping. And those are highlights. An animal is a big caloric source, even if it's a rabbit, even if it's a fish, compared to plants. However, most traditional societies, especially hunter-gatherer societies, gathering was one of the main incomes in caloric terms. It's something that's, you've always got that sort of 80-20 rule that's been thrown around for a long time, that 80% of the calories come from gathering and 20% potentially from animal sources. I think that number is skewed a little bit in favor of plants, because when you do get a big take of animals coming in, the amount of calories you get off that one or two animals is significant compared to even a large load of roots, which are a fairly high caloric food. But I was eating 3 to 4 times a day out there. You had to. That's how much I was gathering. You had to eat that much of that plant matter in order to get enough calories just to maintain body weight, or in my case, slowly lose it. But you were very much, I said, it was a game. Game was eat enough to stay out there as long as you possibly could, and stay happy and healthy and sane while doing it. So, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I remember you talking about the calories a lot, and I was like, calories is something I don't really think about in my daily life. If anything, I'm trying to restrict calories from my diet, but then you were out there just looking and be like, okay, this cup will add this many calories, and And again, you were very present into the day-to-day, and where you're going to have a gallery for the next few days so you could stay there longer. It was amazing. So
yes, so it's one of those things. Our modern lives, everything is about controlling calories. And when it comes to staying alive outside, just staying alive. French have a wonderful saying. C'est le gras, c'est la vie. It's fat is life, essentially.
So
yeah. And they're spot on, because fat has 9 calories per gram. Carbohydrates and protein have 4. So fat is everything. It really is.
Good to know. Good to know.
Yep.
Okay.
Don't fear the fat. Good fat. Good fat. You know,
of course, as long as it is good fat.
You know, margarine. That's not. I don't know what that is. That can't be good for you.
I know. Yes. As long as it is good fat coming from natural sources, I agree, especially animal sources. So, yes. And now, Theresa, I want to talk more about you and about your solo trips, because this is the Solo Female Traveler podcast. So, can you tell us some of your solo trips in the past and the reasons why you have taken them?
Sure. So I have I did quite a lot actually in my early 20s, and actually a little bit in high school even. I would go out for 2-3 days at a time, and then in my 20s it was kind of moving up into the week and a half range. Usually going out, just testing out my various living skills. I don't call them survival skills very specifically, because survival skills, survival itself, concept of survival is you've ended up in a situation you did not intend to be in, and the entire goal is to get out of that situation as fast as you can.
Oh,
that's not what I do. I go out and I intentionally put myself in a situation, and my goal is to live comfortably there. The first few days might be a little bit rough and might feel a little bit like survival, as in you're just trying to stay alive. But after that, you know, you've established some sort of basic tool set. You've established a camp. Even if that camp is mobile, your tool set is your camp. Then that's sort of the progression of things. And that is probably my main, like, the reason that I would go out and do things. And now I just enjoy travel. I enjoy meeting new people. I enjoy seeing new places. I love just jumping into a culture that I know very little about and just seeing how you get on. There's always amazing, interesting things to learn. I was actually just thinking this last course in California is the first course in quite some time where the group I was giving the course to, English was their first language. So I teach all over the world. I do teach in English. A lot of places I do have a translator with me, but it's different. You change how you say things. You structure sentences a little bit more simply. You make sure that you slow down. It's this, that, and the other thing. But because you're there and you're surrounded by people from that country, it's amazing how quickly you pick up bits and bobs of whatever language you happen to be in, of the country that you're in, except for France. France is tough. Sorry, France. French is just so hard to wrap your tongue around.
It is, and for sure it has a lot of sounds that English doesn't have. But yeah, that's one of the main important parts of solo traveling. You know, you're out there alone in a different culture. It's just the fact that you're alone makes you connect deeper with the people around you. And again, you have no one to talk to. So you're just picking on words from the language. And of course, in your case, you are surrounded by a group of people from that place. So, and I guess the attention is on you all the time. And also you're constantly giving attention to your students as well, right?
Yes, so, absolutely. Absolutely. And most of the time they're really eager to share, you know, hey, this is what makes this country cool. And you're like, that's fantastic. So when we work with this part of the animal, what about you guys? How does anybody have stories about how did your grandma do this? How did the butcher down the block, you know, or occasionally I get people who are actually butchers or people who deal with animal processing. They're like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this tool used that way. A lot of times for butchery in a commercial sense, things need to be a lot faster than how we actually have to deal with just one animal.
Got it.
So it's interesting to see the time-saving things that are done.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. And so first, your journey with solo travel has been you start in the woods And then from there, I know you immigrated to England at some point in your life, I think over a decade ago, right? And
Yes, in
then
2009.
nice. Okay. So
Quite a while ago now.
it's been over 10 years for sure.
Yeah.
And then because of your courses, you've been traveling all around the world.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about making a home in every place you visit and stay at?
Okay, so I guess making a home in every place that I visit is what makes me comfortable there. And sometimes it's just the little things like if I'm traveling in my van, I have a pillow. If I travel to a country by flying, I quite often will buy a pillow if I'm going to be there for a while, just because one of the things I like is to sleep in a comfortable way. And a pillow for me does that. A pillow is more important to me than a sleep mat. I can sleep just on the ground, but if I have a pillow, fine, no worries. So a lot of feeling at home is feeling comfortable. And that's, having those little things that make you happy and content, and waking up and making sure that I've got orange juice in the morning, which is a really silly thing. I crave orange juice all the time. So it's like orange juice and a pillow. Yeah, good, I'm home.
So being at home is being comfortable. But then also when we travel, the idea is to get out of your comfort zone. So it's just find that comfort in the discomfort pretty much.
Yes. And there are, you will never feel at home if you're completely uncomfortable. So one is social comfort, just being willing to do things wrong, say things wrong, be the idiot tourist, because that definitely happens. Yeah, quite often where, you think the bidet's a water fountain and, those kinds of silly mistakes that everyone's made. If you have a few little things that you bring with you. So one of my things that I always tell people is just if there's one or two things that are your thing, I don't care if that's your favorite necklace or something as weird as mascara, or a pair of shoes that if you have those with you, you feel like, there you go, that's your home. Yeah. Or a routine. Routine is really important. That thing that you do, whether that be the bedtime or the routine in the morning, or doing 5 minutes of yoga, or whatever it is that's your thing. That for me, I tend to have weights with me when I'm in my van. So I do some weightlifting in the morning. Quite often. Or if I'm flying, then, I'll do some sort of body weight exercise. Not for long, 15 minutes, something like that. But
wow. I truly admired your drive, because not even me being at home in the comfort of my home where I have everything that I can just get up and grab it, like carving 15 minutes of my time to do that, let alone when I'm traveling. Mm-hmm. When I'm traveling, it takes me so long to get into a routine and to be like, okay, be intentional with okay, I'm going to do this activity that I enjoy, or I'm going to do this. Right. And just like scrambling until after a while I am able to create a routine. So that's I admire that from your part. So
well, I have a pretty physical job as well, so that kind of thing does help just to balance out the physicality of the day to day, by doing something that's intentionally physical, so it's balanced. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So, Theresa, now that we're talking about bringing things that make you feel at home or comfortable, I want to ask you about, this is 2023, right? And especially in the US, most of us don't know anything about ancestral or living skills. And is there anything you would recommend for solo female travelers to learn or bring with them when visiting a remote area?
Ooh, remote area. Okay, well, it depends how remote is remote. Then if you're planning on being there for a while, then just follow the normal routines that are recommended in these places, which is tell someone where you're going. If you leave your vehicle, please leave a note in your vehicle saying when you'll be back, that kind of thing. So pay attention to the weather, dress for the weather. Bring the things that are common sense. And then tools. Bring a pocket knife. Bring a lighter. Know how to start a fire. Just know how to start a fire. Fire is probably the most useful thing. I can build any tool I need to if I have fired a couple of rocks, and so can anybody else. Because every single person on this planet's ancestors did that exact same thing. So, those are some pretty basic. You don't need to learn how to flint knap or break rocks if you just have your little pocket knife with you, something decent. Your Swiss Army knife, okay, it's got a pretty weeny little knife on it, something with a slightly stouter blade, but it can still be folding as long as it's got a good locking mechanism. Bring something that has a comfortable handle and is comfortable in your hands. It's an awful lot of knives are made for people with larger hands than some of us ladies have. And if it doesn't fit your hand, then you're not going to have good control. Control is fairly important when you're swinging something sharp around. Yeah.
Got it. So bring your common sense.
Please bring your common sense.
That's also the same when people ask me about solo female travel. And like, the first thing is common sense. Yes. And follow your gut. And also, so for the survival skills, get familiar with how things are done from the people in that area. Mm-hmm. And a pocket knife that fits your hand. And if you have a vehicle, leave a note letting everyone know when you will be back.
Just let somebody know where you're going and when you'll be back. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And of course, learn how to make a fire. I
learn how to make a fire. Fire is great. Because, we've talked a lot about mentality here. And I'll tell you the first thing that is going to pick up your mood if you've ended up in a situation that's kind of crap and you don't want to be there is sitting around a warm fire where you can suddenly potentially heat water or cook food if you have it, and if not, it's just a mood lifter, and it's an incredible one.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna go to my backyard to set a fire at some point.
Yes.
Yeah, very important to know. And do you know the reasons why the fire may be a mood lifter?
Well, I have a funny feeling that's going to be quite genetic. Fire and humans have been together for quite some time. We have evidence for the use of fire by humans going back to about 1 million years at this point. We don't know if that's intentional creation of fire, but it's the use of fire. So that's been a huge part of our evolution as a species. It's one of those defining things, along with stone tool making and, in all honesty, in my opinion, animal skin tanning as well, or processing, is that definitely allowed us. It's one of those things that allowed us as a species to come out of temperate areas. We haven't had any body hair for a very, very long time. We weren't moving out of those temperate areas without a second set of skin. And so stone tools, fire, clothing, those are the three things that really define us as humans. Yep.
Got it. No, definitely. Fire has been key to human evolution for sure, and has given us so many advantages for sure. So, Theresa, can you tell us more about your business?
Sure. So my business has a couple of different aspects to it. Number one would be the teaching these skills courses and how to. And I'm usually brought in as a specialist instructor for various schools around the world. And it's really easy to find me. I have a website. It's www.teresaemmerich.com. I have all my courses listed on there. If you're interested in taking a course, like I say, I am teaching in between 12 to 14 countries this year, depending on how it all works out. So I may very well be somewhere nearish to you. The other aspect of my job is doing analysis of prehistoric and early historic leather artifacts for museums. If you're interested in getting a hold of me on that, again, my website is www.teresaemmerich.com. I guess there are 3 W's in there, but you get it. And I do have a section there on the analysis that gives a bit of my background, and I have a book out on that as well, which, if you're into tanning and you want to read it, please be my guest. It is definitely not a how-to book, but it's full of a lot of very interesting information.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I will make sure to leave the link to your website and your social media in the show notes. Theresa, thank you so much for everything you shared with us. And I deeply admire what I saw from you on the show, that you were there for over 60 days, living in extreme conditions and with very little food. And also, I deeply admire the mental strength that you had throughout the show. And also, now that I go to meet you and online, I also deeply admire your positive attitude and everything that you're doing for others to reconnect with their ancestors and with ancestral practices as well.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and really being mentally positive on the show wasn't that hard because I was having a great time out there. And honestly, I have a great time in my life. I love my life. My life is great. My life is wonderful. I'm working towards having a Center for Ancient Technologies that will be set up in Sweden. So do stay posted for all of those.
That's great.
Upcoming events. Yeah.
This is the life you chose to have. So
exactly. And I'm very happy. And really hope that I'll meet some of you guys along the line. So come and join me for a course somewhere.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Theresa.